Hello and welcome to Geoscope on Politics Social with me and Ollie BowlerHatMan. How you doing, Ollie BowlerHatMan?
I'm all right.
And I'm Graham Hughes, just in case you don't know. So today we're going to be talking about blood feuds. We're going to be talking about the blood feuds between China and Taiwan against Russia and Ukraine against various people within Russia. The blood feud between Israel and Palestine. The blood feud between Israel and Hezbollah. Israel and Hamas. Israel and the Houthis. Israel and Iran. And just for to keep things interesting, we'll talk about the blood feud between Saudi Arabia and Iran as well, maybe a little bit about that, and also Donald Trump, who's promising death and retribution to all the people who have been mean to him. So he's just done a town hall, pre-recorded town hall with all women, where he singled out the Pelosi's as people that need to be possibly rounded up and dispatched.
Do you want to start with Trump?
I don't really. I hate him, and I wish he would just F off and go away. But I guess he's not going to. So just to people watching at home, thank you very much for joining us this evening at unusual time, unusual day, but we're here. Yay. I just want to say a big thank you to Dave W in there, and Job James, Anthony Fisher, Pete's Music, and some guy called BowlerHatMan. Don't know who that is, Ollie. We've got Anthony Fisher. I've said that one. We've got Richard Grumpy Git, Simon Smith, and Vendetta in there. Hello to you all. And if you'd like to join the chat, all you need to do is hit that subscribe button and wait for 30 seconds, and then you'll be able to join the chat. Just don't be rude or a big troll. We'll make it so you can watch, but you can't actually take part. We will make a eunuch of you. Anyway, Ollie, I've got a question for you from this morning from Puninator.
Oh.
He wants to know, where's your bowler hat, man?
It's there. You just can't see
Excellent.
it. It's a ghost hat.
We'll add it in post. We'll add it in post. Okay, so let's talk about Trump then. Go on first. Let's start in Trumpland.
So I want to talk about first of all, Trump absolutely melting down because he went to the Chicago, what is it now? The Chicago Economic Club, and it is basically a gathering of really rich Republicans, very rich multimillionaires, business owners in America. And during this interview, this guy is he's like a US expert, and he's very, very anti-tariff. Of course, Trump's massively pro-tariff
because he doesn't know what tariffs are. He thinks tariffs are he thinks they're paid by the Chinese. They're not. They're paid by American companies to the American government on Chinese products.
Exactly, and that's what was so bizarre throughout all this interview, because he's like, it would be like, okay, you're going to put a tariff on, on a good, but the first question is that actually made in America to begin with?
Yeah.
Because if not, then you've got to be able to build up the manufacturing. You've got to get all the expertise.
Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff that would actually go into just investing in that item. Yeah. And then it depends if they can do it or not. Lithium is a perfect example. There are lithium.
They sent the storms to protect the lithium mines 100 miles away from Asheville or wherever it was in North Carolina. They got absolutely mullered by the storm. It was Storm Helene. It was the Democrats because they can control the weather.
It was the woke.
Although we can't affect climate change by doing anything about burning all this fossil fuel. I saw something this week, and when you see something on Facebook, and your first inclination is like, it's bollocks, because most things on Facebook are bollocks. But it said that if you got rid of coal, gas, and oil, you'd also be able to get rid of half of the world's ships that are going around burning very, very dirty bunker oil. And I was like, it's got to be bollocks. And it was. It's 40%. So it's not 50%, but it's nearly. 40%, mate, of all shipping is for fossil fuels. So if you're making your own energy on your own continent and in your own country via wave power, solar power, hydroelectric, geothermic.
Also at this meeting, it's very clear he didn't even understand why the US car industry had failed.
Because he didn't understand why the US car industry.
Yeah.
Full stop. There you go. That's your headline.
And it all came down to the fact that, European and Japanese car manufacturers got to the point where they were able to make better cars than American cars.
Yeah.
And that's still the case. And it was because all the American car manufacturers have just not put any investment into actually building and making better cars.
Yes.
And that has been the case for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
That's nothing new. Most people who look at or are experts in the car industry will be able to tell you, like, that's the first thing why the American car industry just went kaput, because it just stopped innovating. And the European car companies and Japanese car companies just absolutely dominated them, even now. But
well, this is the downfall
we're going to put tariffs on them. We're going to put a 200% tariff on cars from Mexico.
Well, the Omnicorp is the logical end place of capitalism, late stage capitalism. It's one corporation that runs everything in that particular group of products or services, and you get no choice in the matter. You have to use that one corporation. And it's worse than communism, because at least sort of under communism, you could complain to the government, I guess. And in a proper communist system, I guess you could have free and fair elections, not that you normally have them under communist systems, because they tend to also be totalitarian and authoritarian. That's another story. But you can't do anything about the fact that these companies who run these essential services, whether it's making substandard cars or pumping shit into our rivers, if you don't have the choice and you have to use that one company, then they've got no incentive whatsoever to make things better. And we see this time and time again, especially with the big American companies like the car industry, but also like Kodak. I think about Kodak a lot. I think I think about Kodak more than David Mitchell thinks about the Roman Empire. Because it just, for me, it's phenomenal that an American company that was the second biggest company in the world by value in the 1980s. It was a famous Trivial Pursuit question: who is the biggest silver importer to America? And the answer was Kodak, because they used silver nitrate in the films. And within 20 years, they'd managed to go bankrupt. And how do you do that? Well, because they didn't innovate. Well, they did. They came up with the digital camera. They designed it and then just put it in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, they just didn't take advantage of it. Yeah.
They owned patents on pigments and dyes that could only be used in their ink, that only they could make that particular chemical construction or whatever. And it meant that they could make photographs that you could print at home that wouldn't fade as quickly as normal inkjet printer stuff fades. And it does tend to fade very fast, but then you can just print another one. But yeah, and they just didn't take advantage of that at all. And they lost not just their market share, but their entire company went tits up. Yep. So yeah, that's always fascinated me. Just the whole end stage of capitalism where it ends up eating
bear in
itself.
mind that's a big company example, but there's multiple companies like that that's happened to that exact same thing, because either they had invented it or they just didn't care. I mean, this is where my nerd stuff comes in, because as you know, me and Phil do share a hobby passion. We're both into sort of Warhammer 40k and wargaming. And one of the big conversations is 3D printing. Like, why hasn't 3D printing sort of taken over? So I'll just show you an example. So this is my unpainted model here.
Yeah,
but that is made using traditional plastic injection molding.
Is that some kind of like insane space marine? What even is that? It keeps disappearing. What is it?
It's basically a gigantic orc.
Gigantic orc in armor.
Yeah. So that is like traditional, but then other people would turn around and say, "Oh, but I can do that with 3D printing." And yes, you can make that in 3D printing. The only thing at the moment is that with the way Games Workshop make their models at the moment, massively outproduces 3D printing, because a 3D printer at the moment cannot match the massive large scale model production that GW have to do to be able to fill their demand. Now, eventually that might change, and every year at GW's investor conference.
This is Games Workshop, who basically run the whole Warhammer 40K
one of the
stuff.
UK's biggest companies, by the way. Yeah,
fun fact.
Yeah,
on every high street.
So someone always asks about 3D printing, and their response always is the exact same thing. We are looking into it. We aren't blind to it. We're very aware of it. But at the moment...
So what would you suggest that they allow their 3D models to be purchased so you can download it as a pack, a virtual pack, and then print your own at home?
The thing is, if they did that, then why are you going to buy multiple models?
But you have to buy the... I mean, it'll be like buying an e-book instead of a physical book. By the way, my book's available in all bad shops.
It's sort of different because you want people to buy multiple models. You want them to be able to make that purchase again and again. You want them to pay that 30 quid, again and again. It's not like
I see, because it's like pieces, isn't it? And you can have multiple pieces of the same orc or the same space marine or the same Eldar.
If you sort of sell that that 3D printer guide, they've basically essentially made only one purchase and that's it. It's sort of they like GW are very, very aware, very, very aware of like 3D printing, which is good because you'd want them to be aware of
the
that.
Looming sword of Damocles over their heads.
But
well, I mean, a subscription-based model, that's what you have for that. It's worked for Adobe, it works for ChatGPT. You pay £20 a month, which is more than you'll spend on models every month, and you get unlimited downloads. This is what Lonely Planet should have done a long time ago. They should have had an app that allowed you access to all of their guidebooks. But it was a subscription model. You can have a light version that allows you different books at different times, randomly. So it might not be useful for where you want to go, but it can give you ideas. But Lonely Planet's one of my favourite sort of fables of a family-run business for many years that was taken over by the big boys. It was taken over by the BBC, and it just went tits up. They didn't know what they were doing.
So many stories of companies like that happens to. Even like old traditional companies. There's Pony Express, probably like one of the oldest ones. That got done out by the Telegraph. So there's all these stuff about constant stories like this, and you've got to be innovating. You've got to constantly be looking. But forward.
Blockbuster was offered Netflix.
Exactly. Yeah.
They would have been one of the biggest companies in America right now, had it not been for the fact they went, no one's going to want to strip movies in the future. They want to go they want to walk down the street in the rain to Blockbuster and then stand around with their mate going, no, I've seen that one. No, I've seen that one. I've seen that one. You're a bit younger than me. You might not know the pain of this.
I do remember Blockbuster.
I've seen that one. Oh no! And then you finally find the one that you want, but they had they had the box out, but unless there was an empty box behind it, you couldn't get it out. Anyway, One Angry Pagan, thank you very much for the super chat from about 10 years ago. Florida to be underwater in 25 years. Do they care? No. I think that's a bit unfair. I think some of the people in Florida care a lot. But the people with the money.
Have you seen some of the videos from people from this? It's unbelievable, like the amount of damage and devastation that's happened out there. And I think there's a YouTuber called Beau of the Fifth Column, and he's out there in Florida, and he's like, at the moment we've got Republicans playing politics, saying, well, we're not going to go back into into Congress to help increase the money, to sort out all these disaster sites, to help start the rebuilding process, to help people rebuild their lives and businesses, because we're not interested in that because they're playing politics with it. So that's incredibly shocking. But there's a lot of channels out there just showing the amount of devastation. But it honestly looks like The Walking Dead. Like, if you've ever seen like what The Walking Dead looks like, you've watched it. Honestly, it looks like an episode, like they've walked on set of The Walking Dead. It's unbelievable.
But Project 2025 under Trump, he wants to get rid of FEMA. He wants to privatize FEMA essentially and give it out to the state. So each state will be involved in its own disaster relief, which kind of takes away the whole idea of having a federal system that helps out states who, in the federal system that need assistance. It's going to be very much
some states
a libertarian, every man for himself, every person for themselves attitude. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, some states are going to benefit more than others because there are some states, obviously, that don't tend to have like almost regular occurring, natural disasters like,
Yeah,
hurricanes or tornadoes or things like that. So there are some states that are going to be like, well, we don't really need to, um, use any of this FEMA money. So they're going to end up, cutting that money to put into other things. And if a disaster should happen or anything like that, then they're not going to have the money to be able to respond to some of those, potential disasters. That's why it should be very, very much a federal system.
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it's something that we talk about a lot on this show and a lot on this channel. Is that the people in charge of a lot of things at the moment aren't the people who should be in charge of them. They should be a million miles away from the levers of power or having any say over this stuff. And we're entering a time, and this is maddening, that there is no moral reason for continuing to burn fossil fuels at the rate we're burning them. There's no economic reason either. There's no economic reason now whatsoever. Britain is entirely coal-free when it comes to production of power, and had the Tories not put in a ban on wind farms for the last 8 years in this country, well, we could be far and away an exporter of power. I mean,
we would have had all that energy infrastructure.
Yeah, we'd have it in place. Yeah. And this idea, what do you do when the wind doesn't blow? And you're like, what, around the entire United Kingdom? We're one of the windiest countries in the whole world. Yeah. And especially, out in the North Sea and the top of mountains in Scotland, we're not going to have a day where we suddenly move somehow to below the Tropic of Cancer and just around the top, the equator, the doldrums. We're not going to move there. We're just.
And then the other thing, you look at nuclear power, because there's a lot of people that are, even though they're really pro, moving to green energy, they are like, well, look, the best way to help with that energy transition is nuclear power, because you've got those energy plants, and then while those are built, that sort of helps you the transition into green energy.
The problem with nuclear is not just that it's got a very, very bad image problem. It's so bloody expensive. It's one of the most expensive ways to make energy, because you haven't just got the capital costs of building the stuff. You haven't got just the costs of shipping the uranium from Australia or wherever we buy our uranium from. It's definitely not. It's not from Manchester, I don't think. You've also got the decommissioning costs. These, what do you do with the spent fuel? I know there's not that much spent fuel, but it can do a lot of damage. So I would rather see more battery technology, more money R&D put into that, but also just ways of thinking about batteries. And I've spoken about this on the channel before. Like, if you want to store energy because you've got too much of it during the day when the solar panels are all working, pump water up a hill. That's it. Leave it there in a reservoir. And then when you need power at night, you open the sluice gates and let the water go down the hill, and you turn the turbines. Hydroelectric at night. That solves that problem. The other thing that we've got as well is we've got this aging infrastructure that can't take the power that will be required to run our charge of our electric cars.
The national grid.
The national grid needs upgrading. And this is another thing where the Tories have been dragging their heels because they've not done it, and also selling the national grid to a Qatari Chinese consortium.
And then Suez as well. Suez is another one that's just haven't been built.
Yes. The Suez Canal?
No, Suez, as in
Yeah, I know.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Jup James is saying, Graham, thanks to the Tories, you even need a German to manage the 3 lines. Did you see the hysterical headlines in the Mail today about there being a German running the England team? Did you see this, Ollie? I'll try and bring up the quote on me phone because it was just
it's all over now or something like that. And you're like, well, actually, isn't that a good idea? Because I'm not a football person, but
not a dark day for England. That's what it says on there. A dark day for England, if you can. Believe that.
I hope we win the World Cup next time under this guy. I'll tell you what, they will lose their minds. They will absolutely lose their minds, because I am not a football person. I do not follow football. Football is not my thing. But even I know the team we constantly always lose against is the German team. So it's like, hold on a second. Should we actually maybe not bring in like a German manager then, or like someone from Germany? I mean, from like my non-football perspective, that seems to make quite a lot of sense.
No, it makes no sense whatsoever. I would have, even as an Everton fan, I would have quite liked to see Jurgen Klopp become the England manager, because I think he could do some miracles, and he seems like a really nice guy as well. Even though I'm a blue, I will give him that. He seemed to have his head screwed on the right way. Anyway, so should we talk about some of the feuds then? So we've had Trump not knowing what tariffs are, and we've had him deciding that he's got some, Wookiee blood debt or something against the Pelosi's and everyone who's wronged him, and Jack Smith, and he's going to round up all the communists and fascists and Marxists, apparently. This is what he's just said recently at this all-female town hall that he was doing. Kamala Harris is going to be on Fox News tonight. This should be interesting. It could be make or break for her in some ways, because the margins are so narrow between who's winning.
The thing is, I don't think his appearance on Fox News really matters, because let's face it, the people who are watching Fox News, they're already Trump supporters. I doubt there's very, very few people who are going to watch that and change their minds.
Yeah, you're right. But in the same way that you've got to think about GB News, don't think about the people who watch GB News, think about the people who share the clips from GB News. So if she makes an absolute twat of herself on this show tonight, then there's a chance that will go around the world very, very quickly via Facebook. And a lot of people who might vote for Kamala, someone who never watches Fox News, will see that clip and go, oh, well, I've changed my mind entirely now. I'm going to vote for the rapist.
I still think she's got this in the bag. I really do. I mean, there was a thing on the Majority Report yesterday about a lot of the polling that's being done that like shows that it's like in these swing states, it's actually biased polling from like pro-Republican outputs.
But the Majority Report could just be a giant caterpillar smoking copious amounts of copium.
But you also have to remember, these were the exact same people predicting there would be this red wave in the midterm. That there's going to be this massive red wave in the midterm. That
but it's also the people who said
take the Senate, and that did not materialize.
Yeah, but also in 2016, it was on the 538 site. It said that Hillary Clinton won 90 times out of 100.
Yeah.
So the error, if there's an error, it could go either way. It could go both ways.
Know.
Maybe no one will vote for either.
Like I say, watch the Majority Report. They had a very good discussion about the polling, like what's actually going on with this polling in these states. It will make you a lot less anxious about it for sure.
My anxiety, I'm total inside out too at the moment with my anxiety. It's pretty high, especially when I've seen what Trump has been doing behind the Trump's people, or the people controlling Trump in Heritage Foundation. I've been doing the last few years of putting their people into places of power, into voting, polling stations, into electoral commissions, electoral colleges, or whatever they're called, to cause trouble, which they will. Alec, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Don't forget, since no Roe versus Wade, polls are weird. Yes, well, we have to bear that in mind. Should we skip over to our friends in Russia? By friends, I mean mortal enemies in Russia. About Kadyrov,
yeah.
Who's this weird-looking
so I think we have to remind people who he is first.
Okay.
So
he's a horror.
Kadyrov is essentially a warlord from Chechnya who pretty much rules Chechnya on behalf of Putin. So during like the Second Chechen War, Putin wanted to be, big hard man. I want to show that the First Chechen War was a complete, fluke. It was bad leadership. This is why, I'm here to be, supreme Russian leader. But things start going incredibly wrong for him, just as they did in the First Chechen War. So he then goes shopping around, finds Kadyrov. Basically, he's able to bribe Kadyrov, basically say, I will give you all the power, the money you need you run Chechnya on my behalf. I'll give you the autonomy you need. Just remain part of the Russian
and
Federation.
run it with an iron fist.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. The people of Chechnya are not scared of Russia, but they are terrified of Kadyrov, because Kadyrov basically is like the Iron Fist incarnate. If you can think of someone who rules through fear, this is who would be, number one or two guys in the dictionary.
Yeah,
we've been saying
he's a horror show. He's the guy who puts gay people into camps.
Yeah, he's done anything bad you can think of. He's probably done it.
Yeah. Didn't he throw someone out of a helicopter? Didn't he brag about murdering someone with his own hands? Hasn't he?
Oh no, wasn't that the guy in the Philippines?
Oh yeah.
The story.
I've seen a lot of these stories though, and they're all very, very dispiriting. Yeah. But yeah, he's not a very nice man.
Yeah, but very old, not very well, smokes, drinks very heavily.
Yeah.
And a lot of people said he's had a lot of very severe health issues, quite really. So he's not the most well person.
But Ollie, we said that about... Well, people said that about Putin at the start of the war, and here we are 2.5 years later, and the bastard's still with us.
That's true. But if this guy goes, a lot of bad things are going to happen for Putin, because this is the only guy that is keeping like Chechnya like a lid on. If he goes... It could be open season, because we've talked about this before, that in like the Caucasus, we've talked about how bad things got in Dagestan, like last year, a couple of months ago, even. If Chechnya goes, this could start a whole wave of dominoes going. And at the moment, as we've seen in the tussle between Armenia and Azerbaijan, when the Wagner did their dash to Moscow, there's nothing there. It's all on the Ukrainian border. So if something does happen, there's going to be no almost response, and Putin is going to have to respond militarily in some way should something in Chechnya kick off, like Kadyrov die or something like that. And this is where things get slightly interesting, because he came out and has now declared a blood feud against 3 of the members of parliament in Russia.
I laugh, but this is deadly serious. But it does sound like something that a character out of a sitcom would say. When someone irked him, like there's a delivery driver knocks when he's on the toilet, and he runs down and he declares a blood feud. Cue canned laughter. Isn't that hilarious? I mean, does anyone really do that? This is obviously some nerd who's living in the past. But no, this is a real person who really wants to kill these other parliamentarians or government people.
And this all comes from a political merger. And this goes to show you why oligarchies are bad.
Tell us, Ollie.
So,
what about an oligarchy where Ollie's in charge of everything?
In charge. I'd be the benevolent dictator.
Ollie BowlerHatMan garchy.
So this all goes back a couple of years ago. If you ever heard of the company called Wildberries, and Wildberries is essentially like Russian Amazon, and this is a massive company in Russia, and it was owned by this big CEO, and he wanted to do this merger with another company called Rus, but his wife didn't want this to happen, and neither did Kadyrov, and Putin was backing this guy's wife as well. Okay. So the story goes that Kadyrov organized these gunmen to storm this meeting where this merger was happening and gun down the then president of Wildberries. Thus, now his wife is in control.
Jesus.
So this blood feud and this attempted assassination that he's claiming as to why he has now announced this blood feud is because he apparently has witnesses and all these all this evidence to say these people threatened to murder me, to assassinate me. If they do not prove their innocence, then I am going to do a proper old-fashioned blood feud. I'm going to kill them, their family, their dogs.
Jesus, what? Isn't that what he says in The Untouchables when Robert De Niro's getting very upset about Kevin Costner?
Pretty much.
I'm going to burn down his house and piss on the ashes, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy, he sort of sees himself as a bit of a comic book villain, doesn't he? Like, he doesn't obviously regard himself as a real human being, as a rounded human being. But then that was just
honestly
Trump
untouchable.
or Boris Johnson.
In this sphere, he is untouchable. Putin knows that he has to rely on him to keep Chechnya under control. Like, all the other factions in Chechnya are terrified of him, more so than they are of like Russia or Putin. Yeah. So if he goes, then it's a whole can of worms that gets suddenly opened. So
a wormy can of worms.
Yeah. So him doing this, it could get very interesting.
It could get very spicy. Quickly. As who was it who just said our spicy take tonight is that oligarchy? Oh, it's Ed Stacey. A spicy take tonight is that oligarchy equals bad. So there you go. Now you know why oligarchies are bad. Yeah. But should we go on to another blood feud then? Should we talk about Israel? Sorry to bring everyone's evening down, but there's been some developments over there. First of all, Israel may or may not have blown up a Russian base in Syria. We'll talk about that in a moment. And also, they did definitely blow up an outside field hospital in Lebanon. In Palestine, in Gaza. Not looking good for the international reputation of Israel. So tell us more. Tell us more about this alleged attack.
Obviously, they are currently in the middle of invading Lebanon.
Yeah.
And they have suddenly realized, there's a load of blue helmets here. And of course, blue helmets is the
United Nations.
Yeah, it's a little colloquial term for the UN peacekeepers.
Oh, I knew that, and I'm not even a Israeli IDF soldier.
It gets even more weirder from here on, because they've been shooting at these. The IDF have been shooting at these, UN peacekeepers. They've been
nudging each other after they do bases. Ollie, do you think they nudge each other after they shoot a UN peacekeeper and say, "Are we the baddies"?
Probably
make that reference.
Probably. I mean,
anyway, moving on.
It's getting beyond, well beyond comical. But this is where we're going in a lot of this situation. But there is a weird chance that this could escalate, because all they have to do is shoot one of these UN peacekeepers, and that's a massive international incident.
Yes.
I mean, if you've heard about the Irish peacekeepers that were there, that got gassed by chemical weapons by Israel.
What?
Yes. Yes, they
gassed. Recently?
Yeah, just a couple of days ago, they gassed a Irish brigade that was there. It was part of a UN.
That's interesting, because Ireland's been very vocal in their disgust at what Israel have been doing for the last year.
Yep. They used tear gas, which is of course again classed as a chemical weapon. You're not allowed to use it in war.
Sorry, hang on. What? You're not allowed to use tear gas against soldiers in a war, but you are allowed to use it against civilians in a riot.
Yeah, there's a reason behind it. It's to do with like rules of war and engagement, because it comes under like an airborne it's an airborne irritant that you can't use against soldiers. So it's against like Geneva Convention.
Oh wow.
World War I wording, essentially.
Okay.
But yeah, they were essentially doing that. So technically, they have used chemical weapons on Irish peacekeeping soldiers that were there on behalf of the UN.
That's not a good look, is it?
Yeah, it's not a good look at all. Quite frankly.
Do you think that if the if the plan from Hamas was to make Israel look really bad, do you think they've won?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Checking. Yeah. Thought so.
But this undermines the UN though, because if you've got a country that has been attacking UN peacekeepers, what does this then say about other countries where there are UN peacekeeping forces currently present, and what their role is for the future? So this is massively undermining the UN. If America really doesn't respond in any significant way, they're going to regret this, because
Yeah.
now what's to stop China or even Russia doing something very similar in the future and then just going, well, we'll veto it at
Yeah.
the Security Council,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's massively undermining the UN in a very, very bad and negative way that could have some unfortunate long-lasting consequences. The other thing that's happening here as well is that we've just heard about what's going on in northern Gaza. Food hasn't been able to get there, I think, for the past 2 weeks. So the US has now said, well, if you don't resume aid convoys or things into northern Gaza, we are going to embargo you with arms shipments. Whether they will follow through on that embargo, that's another question. Because the US has done this before and they haven't followed through. Whether they will this time or not, we don't know. But this is a very clear-cut example. Once again, America is saying, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, and they are ignoring it. We just had attacks on Beirut, I think today.
Yeah.
And the US has gone, we don't even understand why you've done this. Like what was the point of doing these strikes? Because it doesn't make any
they want to make Israel look really bad. It's almost as though the Israeli government's somehow in cahoots with Hamas for some reason. I don't know. But bloody hell. I mean, way to lose any international support whatsoever. Like, any country now left defending Israel is looking not great, are they? Let's face it, at the moment. Well, I mean, defending Israel's right to exist, that's one thing. But defending what they've been doing over the last year, mate. Anyway, we got a super chat from Chris C. Thank you very much, Chris. How is Israel getting away with using chemical weapons at US peacekeepers? Any other crackpot dictator will rightly be condemned as sanctions and possibly military action being considered. Well, they are considering sanctioning certain members of the Israeli government, and that was brought up in PMQs today. By the Tories, no less, and Keir Starmer. Oh no, it wasn't. It was Lib Dem, wasn't it? I think it was Ed Davey, and Keir Starmer said, "Yeah, we're looking into that." So he didn't say no. He didn't say no. They're our allies and they can do whatever they want. But yeah, international condemnation. I hope that it's this trickle of condemnation coming from the big countries turns into a flood pretty soon, because it can't go on like this. This is untenable. They're planning a strike on Iran. That's going to open up.
That still hasn't happened yet, but that could happen, and that could have big implications depending what they hit, what they strike. So.
And if it's true about the strike in Syria on the Russian base, that's a war on 5 fronts for Israel.
I mean, the reason why that strike happened on the airbase in Syria was, according to the Israelis, that airbase was being used as a landing port for planes from Iran, which were then, those weapons were then being transferred into from Syria into Lebanon. That's their reasoning for it. But once again, Putin hasn't responded. Like Putin has said nothing about that. So, but one of the big things, just to answer that question from Chris, from my point of view, I think there's two things there. First of all, America. America are backing Israel up to the hilt. I think Netanyahu is using this lame duck session that you always have between like transitions and elections of American presidents. He's getting away with it. I think the media, very, very complicit in how this is either being reported or massively going underreported. Because that is certainly one thing that's happened. While it has been slightly talked about, it's being talked about not in, I think, a very serious way that it should represent, that it's a serious threat to like the international rules-based order. And we in the UK, massively supporters of this. This is something that we are known for in the world, for holding up the rules-based international order. And yet we should be, I think, the loudest screamers of this, saying, you should not be doing this. This is bad. America, you need to rein Israel in. You need to do something about it. Because, it's going too far.
It is. It is. And until that happens, I mean, I think, all things being equal, if I was Benjamin Netanyahu and I wanted to stay out of jail and stay in control of Israel and cause a lot of deaths of Palestinians, because that seems to be his MO, I would be on the phone to Donald Trump saying, right, you've got to win so I can have a free reign to do whatever I want, because obviously with Trump in power, America is going to retreat from the world. Taiwan's going to be left to be invaded by China. Ukraine is going to be, in a lot of trouble. I know we're going to be working with our European partners to make sure that doesn't happen, but we don't know. We're looking at Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia being under threat from Russia as well if Trump gets in. And yeah, Israel will be allowed to do whatever the hell it wants. Don't forget under Trump, they officially recognised Jerusalem as the capital rather than Tel Aviv, which is something that the right wingers in Israel wanted. No one else wanted that. The Palestinians didn't want that. It wasn't a step towards peace by any stretch of the imagination. Trump's not interested in peace. And when I hear Trump supporters say he's like he doesn't want war, he doesn't want war, it's like hearing again, echoes of the distant past of saying Neville Chamberlain, he doesn't want war, he doesn't want war. Look at him with his bit of paper, peace in our time, and it's like it doesn't work like that. It's not that simple. And when people offer you simple solutions to complex problems, it's always snake oil. I've got a super chat here from Alec. Thank you very much, Alec Barrett, for that. Very kind of you. 'Twas Lord Cameron who came up with the sanction plan. So there you go. That was the Tories. Led by donkeys, vid 4 kilometres of kids' clothes laid out in a line along a beach. That's from Billy. Yeah, and that was hot. That was 6 months ago. That'll be a lot longer, that line now. It's a tragedy. It is an absolute tragedy what is unfolding. And we're not the first people to say that. But if Trump gets in, it's going to make everything that is bad at the moment, climate change, instability, conflict around the world, terrorism, violence against women and girls, violence against minorities, it's going to make everything worse. So we have to make sure that doesn't happen. There's not much we can do over on this side of the pond, though, is there?
Yeah. There's very little we can do other than sanctions. Especially from us. We don't have that too much leverage on Israel, and I've said this right from the very start. We have very, very little leverage, and the only leverage we really have is against America. And it's how much do you want to really start pushing America, putting pressure on America, say you've got to start reining, Israel in.
Yeah.
I think I said it in one of my videos this a couple of days ago, when Netanyahu was at the UN saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry, we're going to do a ceasefire, etc." And then he goes and commits to strikes, practically pants to Joe Biden on the international stage.
Yeah,
like that's how it came across. And if I was an American diplomat, I would be screaming at Biden like, "What is going on here? They're making us look like absolute fools." If I was a Democrat, I'd be in the office every single day, the Oval Office, saying, "Joe, what are you doing? For God's sakes, what are you doing? Do something."
You're not wrong. Chris C, £5 super chat. Ollie, one wonders if ethnicity plays into the lack of action against Israel, as all we hear is Israel has a right to defend herself regardless. I don't think that's to do with ethnicity. I think that's to do with Israel being a country, and it's a country that is a member of the UN, and it's seen as an ally to the Western countries like the US and the UK.
This is where they muddy the waters. This is where they muddy the waters, because it is right, Israel was attacked by Hamas on the 7th of October. That is entirely right. That happened. And any country that had a similar attack happen to them would have responded in some way. If this had happened to someone in the UK, something like this in the UK, on that terrorist organization, we would have responded in some way. And I think it just goes to show you that this is the case where this was not a military response.
No.
This was a right. Back in 2008, 2009, the last time this happened, we were sort of forced into a ceasefire we really didn't want. We wanted to go in and sort of finish off Hamas back 10 years ago. So we are going this time, and we are, quote, finishing the job.
Never
And
that
is
man.
what they are. That is what they are committed to, and they've chosen almost like
all they're doing is making more people more radical, more children seeing their parents being.
It doesn't make any sense. This does not make Israel safer. This makes them even more unsafe. I think we've said it here before. They are just making tomorrow's terrorists.
Yes, very much so.
And
tomorrow's terrorists today.
Yeah. So not make Israel any safer, just makes them worse. So
yeah, it's all a bit sad, isn't it? Like the way it's all gone in the last few years. And I said this before on the channel. Like I felt 15 years ago we were so close to taking our global responsibilities seriously, having sensible people in charge in general, and an end to war. Like wars were petering out, and now they seem to have come back with a vengeance, come back with reinforcements, to use war terminology, which is really sad. So I mentioned earlier about China and Taiwan. So just to go back the history of this, essentially the people who ran China until the 1940s, when they were ousted by the communists, basically packed up all the money. They stole all the money. They packed it full of suitcases and all the jewels and everything, and ran away to Taiwan. Yeah, they ran away to they ran away to Taiwan. Oh, sorry, Ollie's just disappeared. Sorry, that was my fault.
Yes, the Barnsley Triangle.
Yeah.
The Barnsley Triangle strikes again.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is a conflict that has been going on for decades. Taiwan used to represent the whole of China in the UN until the 1970s, when Richard Nixon's administration made inroads with mainland China, and they took over Taiwan's seat. Now, if you go to Taiwan, it doesn't say Taiwan on your passport stamp. It says Republic of China. If you go to China, it says the People's Republic of China. So you've got this government of this very small island that claims control over the whole of mainland China, and you've got the whole of mainland China claiming control over Taiwan, instead of living as, two separate but equal countries, perhaps. And this leads to really mad things, like at the Olympics. So Taiwan doesn't have a seat on the UN. And at the Olympics, it doesn't get to march under its own flag, really. It goes, what is it called? Chinese Taipei. That's the name of the Olympic team, because they're not allowed to call themselves Taiwan, because it'll upset the Chinese, and they have a lot of sway over the IOC, etc. In the same way that the Greeks didn't like Macedonia calling itself Macedonia, so it had to be called Fyrom for many years, the former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia, which is a bit of a mouthful. It's now called North Macedonia, to differentiate it from the north of Greece, which is also Macedonia. A bit like the region adjacent to Mongolia in China is called Mongolia. And that's why Mongolia used to be called Outer Mongolia, because it was outside of China. Anyway, I'm skipping around what we're going to be talking about here, but essentially this feud between the Republic of China and the People's Republic of China has kicked off majorly in the last few weeks, and now China is doing these military drills, one of which involved them surrounding the entire island of Taiwan. And that sounds like flexing their muscles to me. So
yeah,
can you take the story from there?
Massively muscle flexing. Because China's Taiwan, shall we say, just had a new president installed. And his inauguration speech was very, very sort of, we are Taiwan, we are independent, we are not part of China, we do not want to be part of China. We are independent. Now, at that point, China did not respond. China did not respond. They didn't do anything about that. Didn't even issue a diplomatic response or anything like that. However, just a couple of days ago, before all this kicked off,
the
Taiwanese president came out and said, yeah, look, we are Taiwan, we are, we are us, but we do want peace, and if China wants to work together, to achieve peace, then we are here. We'll have those talks. Um, Xi's response is to now launch a massive military deployment or training scenario
Training
of
scenario. Love it.
basically to train to not only blockade Taiwan, but invade as well.
Nice.
So
Nice.
so much for peace. that overture for peace. In fact, their diplomatic ambassador actually came out and said, "Look, an independent Taiwan and peace in the Strait are not compatible with each other. Like
Great.
you cannot have one or the other. You've got to have one." But if once again, I always bring this up. You look at the polls, the people in Taiwan, they do not want to be part of China. They are
No.
polled heavily on this. They're like, we want nothing to do with China, mostly because
Well,
what
no,
happened in Hong Kong.
yes, true. However, up to this point, relations with Taiwan and China on another level have been getting better. So there's daily flights now from Taiwan to China. Something that would have been unthinkable just a couple of decades ago. There's daily ferries going over. I got a ferry from mainland China over to Taiwan back in 2010. So I mean, that normalization of relations is a good thing. It means you can go from China directly into Taiwan and vice versa. Don't forget, you can't go over the border from I was like Israel into Syria or Lebanon. Those borders are firmly shut because there's no normalization of relations between those two countries. Yeah. So in some ways, it was like, again, 15 years ago, things seem to be getting better, Ollie. But then people get these mad ideas in their head, and
this is Xi and Chinese nationalism at work.
Yes, I was going to say.
This is really Chinese nationalism at work. This is the whole
his administration's dropped
policy.
the ball with the whole Evergrande scandal, which has cost billions of dollars to the Chinese economy. And like all mad dictators around the world since time immemorial, since the first autocrat picked up the staff of office. Great way to get back your polling figures if you're not doing so well is to start a war.
Yeah, and Xi's not doing well. If you look at a lot of young people, they are massively turned off from Xi purely because of the economic situation in China. There's not as many jobs. Yeah. They are about to hit a massive demographic depopulation situation in like a couple of years.
This is the time bomb, isn't it? Because of the one-child policy they had in China for many years.
Yeah, that is about to hit them very, very hard in a couple of years. So if they want to do anything militarily, then the largest army they have is right now. So if they want to do anything militarily, it's that window is closing. And Xi has said that he wants, China to be ready for an invasion of there by 2027. That's only 2 years away. Well, 3 years away.
Yeah.
So that date is very, very quickly, dawning on this. So, yeah, it is becoming very, very quickly a flashpoint. But also, look what's happening once again in North Korea. Yeah. Kim Jong-un has said, the only way to reunite North Korea is through, conquest. He's very, very much now committing more and more to that. He's blown up just recently any roads that were built as part of the peace between them. He's blown up all the roads heading into South Korea.
Yeah.
As
I saw that.
Yeah, we will not be united. So
yeah, there were roads going into. I mean, he's in a perilous situation, I think, just because of the technology that is out there at the moment, and this is why he's doing really crazy stuff. Like, do you remember a few months ago when they were dropping bags of shit and rubbish on balloons, sending them off to South Korea from North Korea, and the only thing propping up North Korea is the new, the new and improved axis of evil of countries that are, making sure that terroristic states are running around.
We've just found out as well, North Korean troops operating in Ukraine.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I heard about that.
Yeah, according to intelligence from South Korea, North Korean troops are
Yeah.
helping out the Russians.
Because don't forget, a lot of the people who are fighting now in Ukraine are not from Russia.
Yeah,
They're,
mercenaries.
they're, they're mercenaries who have been bought from other
Africans as well.
countries. African mercenaries and
A lot of Africans.
North Korean.
They've got a lot of people because they're offering them almost life-changing amounts of money.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're offering them a lot more money than they would get anywhere else.
So we've got a few minutes left. So David Lammy, tell us about his China trip.
Yes, Lammy's going to China. Good. We should be talking to China. Anyway, everyone should be talking to China. But as Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry a big stick. When Lammy goes there, I do expect him to bring up, the situation in Hong Kong, the Uyghur Muslim stuff, and of course, this stuff going on in Taiwan as well. So we should be, talking to China about that. So tell them to, knock it off.
Yeah.
Because next month, Rachel Reeves is going to go to China and talk about economic stuff with them, which they really want, because at the moment, their economy since COVID is not recovering very well.
Yeah.
So Lammy could go, look, if you don't knock off what's going on in Taiwan, so long as you are continuing with that stuff, you can forget about Reeves' visit. I think that should be the play that.
Do you think China's going to care, though? If this was the EU saying this, that is a massive, massive, massive market. It's 500 million people.
Well, again,
the UK...
I think it sets the international standard. I think this sets the whole.
Okay.
This is once again where you can do something and then inspire other countries to do the same. Well, okay, if Britain is not going to do any any economic stuff, which again China is desperate to do, then maybe once again we can influence other countries to go, oh well, actually we're not going to do that because of the stuff going on in the Taiwan Strait as well. So it is an opportunity from certainly a soft power point of view where we can sort of influence countries on that point.
Yeah, that's mad, isn't it? So yeah, I'm talking of mad. Donald Trump was asked this week how many conversations he'd had with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Since not being president anymore, since just being a normal everyday Joe. And apparently it's 7 times, but he wouldn't admit to it. But he said, no, actually talking to Putin is a really good idea because that's how I make peace, by appeasing dictators.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it worked so well for Neville Chamberlain, mate. Worked so well for Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain is now known around the world as this big bringer of peace. He was the harbinger of the long peace, we called it, from 1939 to 1945, in which nobody died.
Crazy thing about Russia? just remember that as well.
Well, what have we got another crazy thing from Russia?
There is this charity called the Friendship Boomerang, I think it is, or something like that. I think they're called.
Okay.
And they are a charity that helps special needs kids. Guess what activity this charity is having special needs children carry out?
Where is it based? In Russia?
In Russia. Mm.
I don't know. Killing people.
Well, sort of. They're having them make ammunition.
What?
Yeah.
You mean like in the movie Schindler's List, where he says, I have to keep these kids here because they can fit their hand in the shells to make the shells clean. Inside
they are having special needs kids make ammunition. I think I would question a charity that is having,
That's some charity.
Yeah. Having, special needs kids make ammunition.
Weapons of death.
Yeah, I think that's a different problem.
To kill kids in some other country.
Yeah, this is part of the Russia's having a massive manpower problem.
Person power, Ollie.
Yeah, person power. Because of this, because of again the war.
None of that casual misogyny here, young man. Young person. Yeah, so we've got people in the chat. We've got Simon Smith saying People's Republic of China and Philippines are arguing over the coral atolls and fishing rights that could drag the US, Aussies, and New Zealand, etc. Well, there's talk of a Pacific NATO, which is going to be set up as NATO was set up against Russian expansion. This will be set up against Chinese expansion. The Spratly Islands are these islands that are contested by 7, count them, different nations, basically along the coast of Southeast Asia, obviously East Asia, and also Borneo. And it's something that there's been going on for quite a long time now, and China has a habit of turning up on these beautiful coral atolls and just concreting over them and putting a navy base there or something, which isn't great. Yeah, but yeah, fishing rights are a big thing. When I was in the Pacific Ocean, you'd see the US Coast Guard would be like helping out boats from these little islands like Kiribati and Tuvalu to stop Chinese trawlers coming into their fishing zones and stealing all their fish. But also Taiwanese trawlers would do that as well. And China would say, well, we'll protect you against the Taiwanese. And then other countries like Nauru, I think, is aligned with Taiwan, not China. The Taiwanese said, we will look after you, Nauru, if you're friends with us, and we'll stop anyone fishing in your waters from China. And it's like this encroaching kind of, what is it, like a proxy battles going on over fishing rights in the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles away from China, thousands of miles away from Taiwan as well, thousands of miles away from America.
Very recently, there was an island that they were arguing over, but the island is like far closer to the Philippines than it is even to China, but China's laying claim to it.
Yeah, but we lay claim to the Falkland Islands, and they're a long way from us. The Channel Islands are a lot closer to France than they are to the UK. Geography, human geography and physical geography don't always make sense. Often they don't make sense. But there you go. I love the fact that they've got these islands that you could probably swim to off the coast of France that aren't French, and then you've got islands literally on the other side of the planet in French Polynesia, which are French, which are part of France. Mind blowing. Anyway, we haven't talked about Chagos Islands, which were given back to the good people of Mauritius by the British government, or it's been announced anyway. I don't think that the paperwork's gone through, but we've run out of time in this episode. Maybe we'll circle back around to that next time. So, always asking me if I've been to Transnistria. I've not been to Transnistria. No, I've not been to South Ossetia, and I haven't been to Abkhazia because they're not countries. And that's all I have to say about that. The Spratly Islands, as I recall, is the island that Ollie's referring to. Yes, the Spratly Islands. But there are other islands in the South China Seas that China thinks that it owns. Possibly because it's called the South China Sea. Maybe that's why they think it. They're like, well, it says it on the label, so it must be ours. Which is a bit concerning. It's a bit like America going, well, South America is called South America, must be ours. Anyway, and final comment of the night. Cathal wants to know, Ollie, serious question here. Are you on the set of Spice Girls Wannabe?
No, it's October, it's spooky season.
Oh.
So we're in a haunted mansion.
What hotel was that video filmed in? Does anyone know?
Oh no.
St. Pancras Hotel. St. Pancras Station. There you go. Were you ever in the GDR, Graham? Says Jup James. Winky face. Yes. Yes, I genuinely was. When I was about 8 years old, so it was about a year before the wall came down, we went to the border of West Germany and East Germany. Obviously, we could drive to the border. My dad tried to argue his way into the GDR without a visa. They told him no, but he was allowed to drive through the barrier and do a U-turn and come out of the out bit where you went out of East Germany. And so for literally a few seconds, we were in the GDR. True story. Ollie's bored to death now. He's like, oh god.
So I was born when the wall came down, so I don't remember these things. So
you young whippersnapper. I've still got my piece, you know. I've still got my piece of the Berlin Wall that I chipped off myself when I was helping knock it down. It was several months after it fell, and you could hire a hammer and chisel. Not a hammer and sickle, because that'd be funny. A hammer and chisel, and you could chisel off a bit of the wall. And what was funny about it is everyone wanted the smooth piece with graffiti on it, but obviously after a few months, all the smooth pieces are gone. And what the people who hired out the hammers and the chisels used to do is just spray just squiggles of spray paint on the wall, so that in the morning when more tourists turned up for a hammer, you know, to hire a hammer and a chisel, they could get a little bit of the wall with a little bit of graffiti paint on it. But it famously had no graffiti paint on the eastern side, because if you went that close to the wall, you would be shot. All the graffiti was on the western side. And my favourite bit of graffiti that was ever on the Berlin Wall was that some wag had written in about 1988, I think, "Don't worry, East Germany, Baldrick has a cunning plan." Always crack me up. Anyway, right, so thank you very much for watching. Thanks very much to Ollie for being awesome. Thanks for the super chats. Give us a like on the way out if you liked it. If you didn't, give us a dislike. I don't mind. It's all interactive. It's all interactions. It's all good.
YouTube doesn't know.
Yeah, and then Phil will be in the morning. We'll be here in the morning for Morning Brew, played by me. So it'll be me pretending to be Phil. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't think you could put up with me trying to do a mock Yorkshire accent for half an hour. It would be painful after the first 10 minutes. But yeah, I'll be back in the morning at 9:30 for Morning Brew. And until then, I'll just say thank you so much for watching. Thanks very much to Ollie, as always. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.